What you
I'm
do?
Katie Tomaszewski, and I run a Pilates business, a wellness studio. It's all virtual called Deep Line Health Club. And that's Pilates classes, meditation, wellness experiences and workshops, including Ice Bash, which is something we do in the summer here in Chicago. We get into a tub of ice and there's music, and it's actually really fun. Just trust me on that. Um, and then my other business is Dynamics 90 Days. So a few times a year, I gather a group together and we all do a 90-day sobriety. And
Okay.
so I've been coaching people through Dynamics since January 2019 was my first group. So we're coming up on our seventh
Seventh. Wow.
cohort
Yes.
this January,
Right.
and really changes lives. It really, really does change lives. You want to have a whole new perspective on your existence. Um, Take away alcohol and see what happens. It's like rearranging your furniture. You didn't move, but everything's different now. Everything's a little different. And whether it's
Yeah.
temporary or you decide that sober is just better for you, I've found it always is rewarding to at least experience it, to at least try.
Sure. Yeah. So, how did you get started with this program? Like, what made you decide to just jump into running your own program like this?
Honestly, a lot of people were asking because I was a big drinker before, and I took the first time I took a break was 6 months, and people were like, "You're still doing that?" And the longer I went, and then I continued to do it again and again, people were like, it made their head turn a little.
Hmm.
And so I would find myself counseling people individually, and I noticed I was saying kind of the same things over and over, and I thought, why don't I get a group together for the new year? I exposed myself on social media as sober because a lot of us, when we're not drinking, we fake it, we hide it, which is something
Yes.
I don't recommend. That's a mistake to make for sure.
Hmm.
And I had a group that just came forward, some Pilates students, some like former neighbors from childhood, like people that you don't even
Yeah.
realize are watching you.
Yes.
And so that was our first group, and it was just such a wonderful experience. So I continue to do it
How
since
many
then.
were in that first group?
9.
Wow.
Yeah,
Out of the gate with nine. I think
yeah,
people don't
yeah.
appreciate how hard that is.
I know. It was. I mean, I think that I'm lucky because of the Pilates studio, and I was able to.
Yes.
The owner of the studio that I worked for at the time was fine with me putting up some flyers, and I think that curiosity was so strong, and I had built such a good relationship with a lot of the people that came into my group that they trusted me already, and they were curious,
Yes.
and they just kind of like went for it full faith. And so I actually at Brink I spoke about that, like whatever you're passionate about, if you're already teaching Pilates, you already have such a good um, you
Trust
have a good
base.
inroad. And so if
Yeah.
you're passionate about something else and you want to guide an accountability group, you wouldn't be it wouldn't be a horrible challenge to fill that first group or two or three. And then after that, you start having to figure out how to market and bring people um, from outside of your network. But you certainly could get your feet wet as Pilates teachers. I think that we're in a great position
Yeah.
to help.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are watching, if you were to create an accountability group today, put in the chat what you would make your accountability group around. It could be business coaching, it could be a sobriety thing, it could be, you know what I mean? Like there's so many things where you can do that. It could be a parenting thing, it could be whatever, right? So I love
I
that.
always wish somebody would do it one about plants. I have some living plants now, but that took like 3 years of failure.
I can
And
coordinate
I was
that
like,
for you.
dang, if somebody would do an accountability group that just like texted me, water the plants that are marked A today.
Let me,
It's so simple, but we need humans. We need
I
humans.
too funny. I know people. I know people.
Yeah. I have like the easiest plants ever, and I would like to eventually have more challenging plants. But again, like or I don't need it, right? Just like
Yeah,
having private Pilates session. It can be a luxury,
right.
but it's one that's really helpful. And we're also busy, and where we can outsource and get a little accountability and a little support, a lot of people want that.
They want that.
They need that.
Right. They
And it's
massively
community
benefit
building.
from it.
Like you don't realize
Yes.
how not related at all, the sobriety thing, how that drew people into my Pilates classes more and made them more aware of me just existing out here, because I was sitting here talking about sobriety, and they might look at my social media and go, oh, she's a Pilates teacher, and then remember that the
Yes.
next time they need Pilates. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like that multiple streams of just getting in front of people.
Yeah. I feel like we could talk the rest of the time on trust because
Yeah.
that has to be the foundation, whether it's movement or this journey that you have people on, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time trust. And I saw something that I think is really in alignment with what I teach. You know, we talk about safe spaces,
Hmm.
and when you're getting vulnerable, it's actually more important that folks come in ready to be in brave spaces versus safe. Like you're gonna get your edges pushed. Certainly in dynamics, you're gonna get pushed
Yes.
to your edges because you just don't realize how much you're leaning on your casual drinking habit. And I do want to clarify, this is not an addiction program.
Okay.
So if you're somebody listening and you feel pretty overwhelmed by your drinking urges, you feel kind of powerless, you can certainly reach out to me. I have tons of resources, but dynamics might not be the best path for you. It's more of a habit change program for folks that are just, they wish they drank less, but they keep drinking anyways. Like,
Yes.
why did I
Yeah.
do that again?
Right.
I could have
Yes.
said no, but I decided not to say no. Now I'm hungover again.
Right. So when you started this and you just started to tell people about it and you're giving people, your counseling and advice, had you taken any course at that point, or were you kind of rehashing stuff that you kind of learned on your own?
No, so when I quit drinking, I did look into AA because that's the only thing I knew about, and it just didn't feel like the right fit. I never ended up going to a meeting. And so I got all of my support. I re-engaged with my therapist. I had a body worker that I saw very regularly, a wiser, older person who gave me a lot of wisdom. I had a few other friends that were non-drinkers. So, and I just like researched like crazy, read every book I could get my hands on. And it's
Yes.
interesting. Most self-help book people are sober, and when you start to look more deeply at that element of their book. And so I really just sort of sponged up any information I could find.
Hmm.
And then I transitioned my skills as a Pilates teacher to
Yep.
help. Because certainly when people come into Pilates, they're like, no, my leg doesn't do that. I
Hmm.
am not allowed to twist or whatever they think.
Yes.
And then you slowly show them that they can do that. Sorry, my
Hmm.
cat is like coughing here, if you can hear that.
That's
Um,
great. We'll get that
sorry,
on the
buddy.
audio after.
But anyways, I found that my skills as a Pilates teacher really transitioned because
Yes.
really a lot about, for me, about how I taught Pilates was about teaching people to believe that they can change and practice
Yes.
that change.
Absolutely. Well, that's kind of like the same conversation we have with your kids, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
not, I would say to my boys, like, it's not like, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's like, who do you want to become? And if you are naturally a teacher, you're teaching Pilates now, but you're absorbing all this content on some other subject matter, you're going to naturally teach that because at your core, you're a teacher,
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that.
right? So 10 years from now, you could be into robotics and you could be teaching courses on robots for kids, right? Because you're just naturally a teacher. It'll just be a different context, a different subject.
Yeah, and the way that it's like a lot of it is just about how you parse out the information and how you
Yes.
engage people to be a part of that, right? Like it's sort of like
Yes.
sometimes when you start teaching Pilates, I know for me, I wouldn't let them move. I would talk, 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 and then now bend a little. Wait, hold on, and I had to learn how to
27 more
get
cues.
right, like let's
Yes.
move and not be, let's engage you in this because nobody came here for a lecture, and that's what I try to stay away from. I
Yes.
provide a lot of information, but really it's more about the engagement
Mhm.
of the practice of being sober, talking about trying sobriety, interacting with people, getting feedback from each other about how they're interacting with people. That's the
Yes.
magic of the group. And that's why every sober program is community focused, because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, when you feel disconnected and lonely, that's like the biggest trigger for
That's
for
exactly where I wanted
drinking.
to go with this. Like, because a friend of mine who took this program was saying that days where she's like, I think I'm done after this week. She'd get off the call with the group and be like, that was so awesome. I'm so glad I'm still in it. These are such great people, right? So
Yeah.
it's not only you as a person who's passionate about this, but that's that level of trust, that atmosphere that you create where everybody can empower one another as well is so key for
Yeah.
success.
Yeah, the peer support is so key because on a day where one person is wobbly, another person's feeling really strong, and it helps to swoop in and say, "Hey, try this." When you're new in something,
Mm-hmm.
it gives you that confidence that you actually can own this sobriety thing that you're trying a little more
Right.
because you've now helped somebody.
I love your phrase wobbly that you just used there because it doesn't have the same connotation as failure or falling off the horse type thing. Like there's this sense. So, what are some of the strategies that you give to people who think, I'd love to do this, but I know that I'm not going to make 90 days? Like, I'm going to be
Yeah.
wobbly on day two.
Yeah. So I have like five kind of key myths slash pitfalls that I see that like across the board in what people believe it means to take a sober break. I'll rattle them off and then we can go through whatever we want to from
Sure.
there. But number one, and I know you're big on this, what is your why? You're not clear on why you're taking a break.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is using a punishment style approach. Again, you see this in fitness too,
Yep.
right? Shame and
It's
punishment.
fitness. Yep.
Um, the third one is misunderstanding boredom.
Misunderstanding boredom.
Over restriction is the next
Yes.
one, and also worrying about other people's opinions. So those five are like the key mistakes that I see people make and where they try it and they fail. So, you know,
Yes.
it does come down a lot to your mindset. You got to have
Yes.
that growth mindset. You got to go
Mm-hmm.
into it knowing that you're not going to be perfect, just like when you try Pilates. Some people come in and you're like, have you done this before? Never have done it, but they just smooth sailing. And other folks,
Yes.
it's really clunky for a minute. And
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
because they couldn't get their legs over their head doesn't mean that they're now not worthy of trying and they should quit.
Right.
It's just about information, right? We learn as we go. So if I have somebody in the group that makes it, usually willpower lasts 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Okay.
And that's why
Yes.
people go and they're like,
It's
I'm
real
going to take a
talk.
month off. It's super
Yes.
easy. And then if they don't have a strategy and they haven't really thought about why they're doing this and a plan, 2, 3 weeks in is usually when folks get wobbly. And I'll even see that in the group. Occasionally somebody will be like, I drank yesterday. And so I just always encourage them to come to us with that information because it's really good information you can work back from and figure out, okay, well,
Yes.
what was going on in that moment? Or
Mm-hmm.
what have you not been doing? Like perhaps you need to be showing up at the meditation class. Perhaps you need to be doing the morning journaling. And
Yes.
all these like mindfulness habits. We don't
Mm-hmm.
dump them on you, but you're supposed to take charge of a few. And usually when
Yes.
folks say, no, I don't need to do that. I already paid for the program, so then I'm done with my end. It's like, no, no, no. There's some work in there too.
Yes.
Um, so I think it's really important first to get clear on why you're doing this. And
Mm-hmm.
I do like a why exercise. You've probably done this before. I think a lot about things I've learned in manifestation where you can't do something because you don't want something else to happen.
Right.
Like I don't want to be hungover. Okay, fine. But why don't you want to be hungover? And then you start thinking, well, because when I'm hungover, I'm really crabby. I'm really unmotivated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, we're looking for some sort of positive. Keep asking
Yes.
why deeper.
Keep
And when
asking
I
why.
when I
Yeah.
went into my hangover, it was well because at the end of the day, I'm like a mean mommy and I am tired at work and I fight with my friends or family. So for me, my why, my yes was to be a good parent and to be
Mm.
a successful business owner. So when every time I say no to a drink, I know exactly what I'm saying yes to.
Yes. Two. Good stuff.
And that's a big problem, I think, for folks when they just go, oh, I'm just going to see how long I can go, and they don't want to think too deeply. They're probably quitting because they maybe had a few bad weeks of drinking and they maybe did something that they're embarrassed about and they're like, I'll
Mhm.
punish myself and then
Right.
we're good. And that's
Yes.
fine, that can work for a period of time, but again, you're in that willpower space. Um,
I Sorry, can I jump in with
yeah,
something
please.
with what you're saying there? I hear, how do you navigate shame around that? Because it's one thing to say, "Hey, I just drank yesterday," and then you're like, "Yeah, talk to me, and we'll sort out. We could reverse engineer how to avoid that." But when someone has that deep-seated shame, and then they do something within the context of this, which triggers that shame again, it's so much easier to just ghost everybody than to actually do it. Like, how do you actually, like, do you proactively talk about shame, or is this something that you kind of navigate when a person gets to that point?
Yeah, shame comes in a lot to this conversation within this program, and you're exactly right. Often I can tell if somebody all of a sudden disappears from the chat for a little while. That's like the number one thing folks do is they hide. Like, oops, I had something to drink, and I should hide now. So right off the beginning, right off the bat, we talk about this and really normalize this concept of
Yes.
failure
Yes.
as something almost to not expect necessarily. I don't want people going into it like, well, I'll just drink when I want, but they don't come into it like that because they've already paid for a program. They're already invested. They've showed up so far. But we
Yes.
really just normalize it. I share a lot of my own personal shame stories from when I was a
Hmm.
drinker, and really try to help folks get comfortable with the idea of perceived failure and supporting each other, because
Yes.
at the end of the day, when you're sober and you're used to leaning on your drunk personality, you're sort of an avatar of
Right.
yourself
Yeah.
that you
Yep.
show up and you're like, I was very like, I don't know, sassy, brassy. And I
Okay.
can be like that still, but it was like really
It
intense.
was your persona.
Exactly. And when I
Yes.
didn't have that, I was ashamed of my personality. I was like, turns out I don't even have one. I was born without personality. And
Oh,
so
yes.
I would go to places, and I knew because I knew enough about the brain and the body that I had to keep showing up uncomfortably
Yes.
in order to get comfortable.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people show up unsupported. They go to an event and they're like, I am such a loser. Nobody likes me. They're in their head so much that shame, they're like, I can't do this thing. Like, my personality is
Mm,
not designed for sobriety, not knowing that they just have to keep showing up. And part of shame is also
wow.
just anxiety.
Yes.
And we know that we can actually reduce our day-to-day anxiety by pushing ourselves into anxious situations like the ice bath that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
Okay,
Which
you
I'm still
go into
very
that
interested
ice
in,
bath for
but
90 seconds,
yes.
you'll be
Yeah.
flying high. Um, you won't be in your head for that period of
Yes.
time, however long that lasts after. So we really push people to actually just walk into that fear, walk into that
Mm,
place where they're going to be uncomfortable. And we're all back there going, we know you're going to that wedding tonight. Like, we're texting you because you're just setting your
yes.
expectations to pleasant, and you're going to show up, and we anticipate that it's going to be awkward. We anticipate that you might not feel like you showed up your best, even
Yes.
though really like it's never as bad as we think it's going to be. But in our
Hmm.
heads, it can be huge. So really, I think we
That's
just deal with
great.
shame with compassion, because we're the
Yep.
whole thing of dynamics is teaching self-compassion and self-trust.
Yep.
And there's nothing that will teach you that faster than taking a sober break, because you have to continually show up sober, continually test your edges and see if you'll have your own back, or if you'll give in, take the drink, and then you can be what people want, what you think the people want, which by the way might not even be what they want. But
Right.
that's that whole
That's what you think. Yeah.
that whole
Yeah.
cycle. So yeah, so it's just compassion, really, just strengthening that compassion muscle.
Love that. Strengthening that compassion muscle.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
good.
and then should I go through the other
Yeah, actually,
pitfalls, just kind
go
of
to the
rattle them
next
through?
one.
And if anybody in the chat has questions they want to pop up, because I get that a lot, people are like, "Yeah, but what about this?"
Yep.
And I think I've seen kind of it all, although I always
There's always
There's
something
no
new.
way that I have seen everything. So feel free if you have any questions about your sober break or taking a sober break
Absolutely.
as I'm
There's a little
chatting.
question icon there too. Hit the little question, then you could the question will pop up on the screen for us. So let's play with that icon. But now, so the next one is punishments, but we're really tied
Mhm.
into that with the shame piece, right? Because like we punish ourselves first.
Yeah. And so the punishment one really also ties into success because of how you present your sobriety break. So if you're telling your friends and family who love you that you are such a loser, you can't believe that you did this and you're never drinking again and blah blah blah, they're going
Right.
to be like, "Oh my gosh, stop. You're too hard on yourself. Have a
Hmm.
drink. Come on." And they're not even
Yes.
trying to be rude or derail you. They just hear you
Hmm.
beating yourself up and they're trying to be a good friend.
Yes. They're
So,
trying to save you from yourself.
yeah, so you really have to think about, again, the gains. Much like the manifestation, you're not getting a hangover, you're getting better
Yes.
business, you're getting better parenting. So when you think about the punishment element, let it go. Like that's going to come into your head. That's crap. That's whatever training we had from like school or who even knows.
Hmm.
Just know it's going to peak up, and we're not going to worry too much about that. Instead, you're going to focus on your gains, which are like endless, from better
Yes.
sleep, saving money, anxiety, depression, reduced
Hmm.
symptoms. If you're somebody who gets pain flares, those can sometimes reduce. I don't like to preach about weight loss. Sometimes people lose weight. The
Yep.
skin gets clearer, eyes get clearer, energy levels are higher. And so if you can just hang on to one or two things, like your close friends know you've been an insomniac. They know that about you. And if you
Yes.
say, "Hey, I took a break from drinking. I've been sleeping like a baby. I feel really good." You'd be hard pressed to find somebody who would want to derail you from that.
Right.
They'd want
Exactly.
to be a good friend will be supportive. So yeah, the
That's good.
punishment
That's a
thing
really good
is
strategy.
just it's just not necessary. It's
Hmm.
just not helpful.
Yep.
Nobody deserves to be punished. We are all just trying to live, and we need to cope in this society. Like, there's no way. We're not living in a normal way at all, okay?
Right. Right.
And so, almost all of us have addictive behaviors that we do, and there's good addictions like trying to always have achievement or hoarding
Hmm.
money and things like that.
Right.
Those are
Yep.
considered good. And then there's the other bad addictions, drinking, drugs, etc. But if we're honest with ourselves, we all have compulsive behaviors. So have compassion for that, because we're just trying to reduce harm here. We're just trying to maybe pivot some of that energy into something that could be a little more functional in your
You
life.
are like oozing with compassion. Like I could see like, like just I feel like just walking into this program would be like just walking into the embrace of people who really want to see you be better on whatever you define better as.
Hmm.
Like I could see the like I would have written on my mirror, what am I saying yes to?
Yes, yes. And I love that. Like at first, it's a lot of mind tricks, right? Write on your
Right.
on Post-it notes, and
Yes.
stick them in unexpected places, or set an alarm in your phone for Friday night at 6 o'clock, and say,
Hmm.
"You're going to work out so great Saturday morning," or "You're going to be the best mom on Sunday," or whatever it is that you're struggling with as a result of drinking. Um,
Absolutely.
and those little cheerleader moments, it's really like you can utilize your break from alcohol to make you a better self partner, and everything improves from there. You can't be a great mom or a great spouse or a great business owner if you're beating yourself up all the time.
Right.
And alcohol helps you. You think alcohol is that abusive partner that is like there for you, like, come on, baby, like, I'll make you feel better. But then the next day they're like super volatile and mean, and they don't do what they said they would and all the things, but you're still like codependent with it. So letting that go and letting you partner with self and you parent
Yes.
self and all the things, it improves everything. It
Wow.
improves everything.
So the why, punishment, the third one,
Misunderstanding boredom.
misunderstanding boredom. Yes.
So again, boredom is two things: anxiety and judgment. So
Hmm.
judgment of self. I'm weird at this party. I know it's like we're in quarantine, so parties are, but just, stay with me. I'm
Yes.
weird. People don't like me, or you're at something and going, this sucks. This would only be good if I was drinking. All of these are judgments. And
Yes.
we are very judgmental people. Like we really are, especially drinkers. When you get down to it, you feel like you're being judged all the time.
Yeah.
But really, like if you slow down and you watch what's coming out of your mind and your mouth, there's a lot of judgment too. So we try to be conscious of the judgment. And then
Yes.
when we're bored, it's reframing that. Like right now, I'm just going to go in a little. I'm just going to get quiet. I'm home tonight. Okay. So maybe I can just literally sit here until it gets dark. That counts as meditation. Okay. Like, don't think about it as boredom. You're just quiet. And that's okay. We don't always need to be doing. That's its own numbing addiction as well.
Yes.
And there's a difference between being bored and being in like solitude. And solitude can be really wonderful, again, when we're looking at a sober break through a lens of self-improvement and improvement with relationship to self. So when you're alone is that time to like get ahead of it and don't say, I guess I'm here, I'm going to read, I guess I'm here, I'm going to turn on a movie. Look at your schedule and say, on Friday, I'm watching that movie and I'm doing it at 7 o'clock. And I don't care if somebody calls me to do something because I've made a date with myself and I'm going to keep that date. So by just
Yes.
being a little proactive and watching the
Yes.
judgment and being okay with being quiet, you don't have to entertain anybody. You are not the court jester. You are not responsible for everyone having a good time. It's okay to be a listener and it's okay to be quiet. You can improve your relationship with boredom, though, if you have a meditation practice, for sure. Like, that's kind of
Yes.
key. You got to get that meditation practice going.
How many of you out there feel like this is like a self-improvement program under the blanket of like
Oh,
it's like
yeah,
this
it's
is it's
totally, I'm
so
like, I'm
deep,
like,
right?
come take a sober break, but it's really,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like a complete, actually Pilates here, Tracy, she did it, and
Yes.
she said it was like an at-home retreat. It's like going on a
Yes.
10-day meditation retreat somewhere, except for you don't have to go anywhere. You're at home and it's a little every day and it builds over time. And the cool thing with that is that like when you go on a retreat, it can be really transformational. And then
Hmm.
you go back home and you're like, okay, how do
And
I
and
integrate
there's
what I
yeah,
felt?
there's no practical application in your home context.
Yeah. And this, because
Yes.
it's 3 months, or you on your own doing your sobriety for a longer time, you're able to just every day, like integrate a little bit, just a little bit.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
lasts. It's like you said something earlier, I think, about habit change, but I love the book Atomic Habits by James
Love it.
Clear, and he always talks
Yes.
about like 1%. So if
1%.
you're,
Yes.
exposing yourself to sober obstacles just a little tiny bit at a time, that's a
Hmm.
different experience than saying like, oh, I went into Michigan at my, lake house and I didn't drink the whole week I was there. Well, you didn't have your normal life there either. So how do you
Yes.
mix those in? Because most people that want to take a sober break, they want to drink less overall. They're not like, I just want to not drink this month. They're like, I wish I
Hmm.
didn't like drinking so much. I wish I
Right.
didn't desire it so much. And that
Hmm.
desire can go away in the same way that you don't desire the toxic partner you had when you were 19. Remember how much you desired that person? And you don't anymore. So desire
Right.
changes. It is possible when your belief system changes. We
Yes.
work a lot on that.
Yeah, so I'd love to have James Clear on here at one point because he talks about that lagging measure, right? And that was a phrase that I remember from that book where like this is a lagging measure of this. Like the way that you do one thing in a small way, it shows over time as a reflection of how you look at, and you're doing that in this whole program. And when we start to look at, you know, all these different elements that we talked about, and I love throwing these words around too.
Yeah, you said something identity. That's what made me
Strategize.
think about it. The identity. Like
Yes.
what is the identity you're trying to have? Okay? Like think about where you
Hmm.
want to be in 5 years, what kind of relationship you want to have, what kind of business, every element, where you want to live, and then like question each of those. Does getting drunk fit there? Does getting drunk fit there? Like is getting drunk a part of the identity of the person of where you're going? Because if you're drinking right now
Sure.
to buy time until you become that person, it's not going to happen. You need to show up. You need to sacrifice in this way. Like it's like that. Show the universe what you want and it will come to you. You open up like this. And it
Yes.
doesn't mean you have to be sober forever. But I will tell you, most people who go through my program, if they don't become sober, which some people do, they maybe like a couple months after the program will start, experimenting with alcohol again. And 9 times out of 10, I get a text within a year. I'm taking another sober break. They do it on their own. Then
Mm.
they've built a positive relationship with sobriety, which is
Yes.
again with the punitive approach. If you only go sober as a punishment, it's like with
Yes.
our kids. We don't want to. I used to make my daughter do Pilates, like if she was in trouble. I'm like, you're taking Pilates class today. And I was like,
Right.
I'm going to ruin Pilates because
Right.
I'm associating it with
With the punishment.
punishment. And if we can instead associate the sober time with reward, and I'm talking
Yes.
abundant reward, you spend a lot of money on drinking, like at least $10 to $30 a day, most people, if you average it out.
Mm.
Some people far more, especially if you go out, you live in a city. So when you take that and you look at how much money you're spending, do not, this is the other mistake, over restriction. Do not try to save money and
Yes.
lose weight and stop scrolling and stop drinking. Just pick drinking
Hmm.
and know that when you change that habit, and it might not happen the first dry January you ever have, but over time you keep exploring it, it will happen. You're going to save way more money than you ever will if you quit and then completely restrict yourself and then you never want to quit again. If your quitting lets you take a private Pilates class every week, if your quitting lets
Yes.
you get a massage every single week,
Hmm.
you're gonna feel good about your breaks from alcohol. Do not save money right now. Spend every penny you would have spent on alcohol back on rewards for yourself. It's really important.
Yes.
It's like training a puppy. At first, you give them treats. Eventually, they just sit and they don't need a treat every single time. You're
Hmm.
not that different. You got to treat yourself at first.
Yes.
And then you don't need it so much, then, and believe me, you'll save money as far as 5 years, 10 years, a lifetime goes. You definitely
Yeah.
will.
Wow.
Um,
That's so good.
oh, the last one I have here after the over restriction is worrying about other people's opinions. This
Opinions.
is a really important
Yes.
exercise. Anyone that's doing a sober break, it's the 6th today. Is that right?
Yep.
So we have not really had a weekend yet because I bet a lot of people didn't start till Monday anyways. And so maybe you have or haven't shared with some of your drinking friends about your choice not to drink. It is so important that you do not hide what you're doing and instead you share about it because by
Yes.
just telling people, I'm taking a month off alcohol, that's a litmus test. Who are your supporters? And who are your non-supporters? Not in
Good
life,
strategy.
but just in sobriety. They're not
Right. Right. Right.
supportive. And that's okay. You're not, don't be mad at them. This is weird. Our culture says drink, okay? So what you're doing is
Hmm.
weird. Um, so when you say, I'm not drinking, you're going to either get the response, yes, love it. I don't even like drinking. I only drink when I'm with you. So many people, you don't realize, only drink
Right.
because you want to. And you get to write them down. Those are the people I call when I'm feeling wobbly. And then the
Yes.
people that you say, I'm giving up drinking, and they make fun of you, or they say you're not going to do it, or they gaslight you, or whatever, you're just going to be like, for this month or 3 months or 6 months, whatever I'm doing, they're not my first person to call. I'm going
No.
to wait till I'm a little more stabilized in my sobriety before I kind of like engage with them about this. And
Yes.
that's the easiest way to support yourself when
That's a
they're,
fantastic strategy. It is.
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
so
yeah,
simple.
it's simple, but I find much like children. Forgive us for all these children analogies as we go the day,
It's the
but like
same
it's the
training.
same. But we sometimes I find with my kids, they just need a script.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they don't have the words to say, "I'd rather do this than this."
Hmm.
And when we empower them with a script, until they find their own words, they can hide behind that script in a good way and realize that they're safer than they thought. It wasn't as bad as they thought. And then they find their words and then they're bolstered in their opinion of themselves and not worry about their opinion of others. They can find their yes, they're saying to all those different things, but it starts with a script.
Yeah. And I love that you say that because when you give up alcohol and you re-enter the world, at first the last group I did, I was like, oh my God, you guys are so wild. Like they were going out to big events the first weekend. I was like, please, you're supposed to stay home for a couple of weeks. Like the first couple of weeks, just lay low and detox. But it was fine. They all did well, but it was just not what I normally recommend. Because when you first go out, think about the last time you didn't drink socializing. Middle school for some of us, early high school, maybe you got through high school without alcohol. So you're automatically transporting yourself back to being 13 or 14. How friggin' awkward were you? Okay, so it's going to take time for you to feel
Right.
cool like a college person or a 20 something at a party. It won't take you 10 years, okay, but it might take 10 parties. It might take 10 awkward parties before you feel like I'm cool and I can handle this.
Yes.
And you're going to go into expecting that, and you're still going to go to parties because you're going to push your edge. You're going to get into that ice bath, so to speak.
Yes.
And because you challenge yourself to be awkward at a big social event or big social Zoom call, then when it's just Tuesday and you have an urge to drink, it's not a big deal. Because we get urges
Totally.
all the time. Like, I want to shut my business down like every 3 days. I'm not going to do it, okay? But
Right.
for whatever reason, we think the urge to drink we should satisfy. But the urge to like
Right.
throw out all your clothes when you don't want to clean your space, we don't do that. But with drinking, we're like, but I had an urge. What am I supposed to do? I have to solve it. Like, you have urges all day,
Right.
every day. Yeah.
How do you really feel about that?
you know, it's
Yeah.
just interesting. There's a lot of brainwashing with alcohol culture. There really is. Like, it's
That's what you're
just,
challenging.
yeah,
Yeah, you were absolutely challenging that. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You were such a big, bold voice for that, challenging that culture.
Yeah, I mean, alcohol, I don't regret the fact that I used alcohol. I don't really regret anything. Like, everything happened for a reason, but I get really sad when I see people who are struggling to access support
Hmm.
have the best intentions about not drinking, but because our culture is so oppressively pro alcohol, even though most people don't
Yes.
drink, it's like it's like high school, how there's like 20 popular kids and they rule the school, even though most people aren't considered the popular kids, they're still in charge. It's sort of
Yeah.
how like the drinking culture is like everyone like make sure the drinkers have alcohol, make sure they feel like really comfortable. If they get too intoxicated, we don't want to make them feel bad about that. We're very protective
Mm.
of alcohol culture, and the sober people are just sort of like, we'll figure out how to deal with it because you're the one who's not drinking. And it's weird because it's like, but you're adding, like, you're changing. I'm staying in normal space and you're going
Yes.
somewhere else, and I've got
And
to
I'm
navigate that.
responsible. Yes.
And it's not like that everywhere, but I certainly, it's like that a lot. It's like that a lot in
Hmm.
a lot of places.
So if someone wants to sign up for this, what do I do now? Have I missed the 90 days? Are we still within this window to get going? Or
Yeah, so I have a full group going right now. They're starting on the 18th, which is Tuesday. But I talked with we have other practitioners that work with us, and we're open to having a second group run. So if
wow.
you're interested in joining, it's not a lot of spaces. Probably I'll open up two more spaces and we'll
Hmm.
split into two smaller groups. So there's a maximum of 5 people in the group, but it might be more like 3 or 4, which is nice because you really get like you buddy up. I
Yes.
used to do like that first group was 9 people, and that was cool or whatever, but people would kind of come and go sometimes and hide in the back. And when it's
Yes.
just like 3, 4 people,
It's
you're
more
in it.
intimate and you can't hide.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so if you are interested, if you're feeling inspired, please DM me as soon as you know, and we'll talk about how we can get you in the program because it's such a gift to yourself. And I love having Pilates teachers in there because they just get it.
Yes. They
They've
get
worked,
it.
like everything clicks faster because you've already worked in behavior change, preaching behavior change through movement and probably lifestyle stuff too. And
Right.
now it's
Exactly.
like, all right, turn that mirror back on yourself and use
Hmm.
that, and it goes quick. The shifts happen quick.
So I joke about my when I have guys or girls who come in here who their doctor is like, okay, you're 47, your dad died at 49, you need to start exercising. I call them like court ordered people, right?
Yeah.
Do you have people who are like, talk to my wife, she needs to be part of this program, sell her on it? Do you have anyone that comes to you like
Oh,
that?
I mean, yeah, but it's the same like Pilates where you're like, I can tell you this exists. I can't really do much more than that. Like, follow me on Instagram. You'll get a sense of what I believe and how I coach, and they just have to come to it because, like, just the same like Pilates. If you're being forced, you know those people you've worked with, and you're like, take a breath in, and they're like, ugh, I hate you. You know, they don't want to be
Right,
there at all, and it doesn't work. Like, you
right.
have to want to be there. So much people want to fix other people in their lives, and
Yes.
it's tricky. And I love a book if you are somebody that's living with somebody who feels like they drink really heavily, and it's causing you problems in your life. There's a great author, Jeffrey Foote, and he writes a book called Beyond Addiction. And it's all about strategies, compassionate strategies. It's not about kicking people out and, these really harsh ways of managing, but how can
Sorry,
you
beyond
coax?
addictions?
I'm sorry, it's called Beyond Addiction. Beyond
Yes.
Addiction. It's a thick book. It's also like available on audio.
Yeah.
But he talks about strategies like, for example, if you've asked your spouse to stop drinking after work, you want them to come home and have dinner sober, and they continue to show up drunk at dinner. Well, you can't obviously make them stop drinking. Like, that's an adult. There's nothing you can do. But what you can do is say, I love you, but if you do come home drunk, you're not welcome to have dinner with us. And still, you're here, you're in the house, like, make yourself some mac and cheese or whatever, but you're going to miss out on that moment. So
Yes.
really all you can do as somebody that's looking to help someone else is change the way you engage. I had a really heavy drinking friend who, when I stopped drinking, she was very mad about it. And I kept asking her to go to Pilates or go to coffee or do things during the day that would not, because I couldn't, she still would get drunk around me. And it was really kind of hard to be around because she would get very heavily intoxicated. And she just wouldn't do it. Like, at the end of the day, she let go of our friendship because if we weren't going to be using alcohol together, she just
Yes.
wasn't in a place to have any relationships that weren't focused on that. So,
Right.
making little shifts is what you can do, and you got to let people fall where they will. It's really tricky to tell somebody that they should stop drinking. I did that for a while, and I lost a lot of friends when I
Right.
was trying to fill my programs. I was like, "Hey, if you seem like you drink a lot," and they're like, "Go to hell." They don't like it. So you kind of have to let people just, post articles. This is where I talk about being open. If you're not a drinker and you see a great article talking about motherhood and drinking or something, post it on your feed. Like, be out with it. Be in support of sobriety, and share memes, whatever, so people know where you stand. And they might tap you on your shoulder one day and say, I've been drinking a lot and I see you don't drink, but you're always happy at parties and
Yes.
stuff. Like, how do you do it? And you can counsel people, or you can ship them on over to Dynamics from there. But there has to be a
Nice.
little buy-in of some kind.
Yes.
Starts
Um,
with you.
that that's so good. My headphones just died, which tells me that we're close to the hour.
Okay. You got them exactly at that point. I love it.
Yeah, that's how old these guys are. Like I mean,
Yep.
I guess 5 days a week for 2 years will do that to them eventually.
I
So
just I just replaced. I got these were just sounding really fuzzy, so I got these. I don't know how I sound, but I was told they have better mics, Jabra, than the iPhone AirPods. If anybody out there is looking for new iPods, they do sound good, but
there you go.
not
Sobriety
not
and tech
affiliated.
support. Yes. Yes. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today. This is so fun. And like I said, offline, I'm going to put both of our conversations together for a podcast. And I'll
Love
throw it out
it.
there so people could learn more about what you do. Because I think last time
Yeah.
we talked more of the origins of how we got here. And today we really unpacked what you're going to say yes to when you say no
Yeah.
to.
How to do it. How to do it. And if you
How to
want to
do
reach out to me anytime. I run these groups only a few times a year, but oftentimes it's because I get two or three folks that reach out to me and I go, okay, well, we'll run another group now. I'll just try to bring in another one or two people. So please reach out to me if you're interested at some point. I'll put you on my wait list, even if it's not for now. I'll let you know when the next time it comes around.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martin.
All right.
Love being here. Take
So
care.
good. All right. Take
Happy
care.
sobering.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.